Breaking point. The universe had rules. Unwritten laws of decency forged through centuries of interstellar diplomacy and bloodshed. Some principles transcended species and cultural divides. Chief among them was the sanctity of rescue operations. You don't fire on ships bearing the universal white and blue insignia of aid. Not during battle, not in contested space, not under any circumstance. Because those vessels weren't carrying soldiers or weapons. They carried doctors, the wounded and civilians fighting to live another day. Even the most ruthless species respected that rule. Until the Marsans didn't. The incident occurred in the Epsilon Eridani system, a neutral zone managed under Galactic Alliance oversight. The human colony on Epsilon IV had established itself as a crucial hub for interstellar commerce, connecting 17 different species through its massive orbital platforms. Humanity, though relatively new to the galactic community, had quickly earned a reputation as skilled negotiators and innovative problem solvers. Their greatest contribution, however, came in the form of medical breakthroughs that benefited countless species. That's why the UES Zenith and its 5 escort vessels had been dispatched when disaster struck the Keldarian mining station near the system's asteroid belt. A catastrophic reactor failure had left thousands stranded without life support, and Earth's specialized rescue fleet was the closest response team. Admiral Maya Santos stood on the observation deck of Earth Fleet headquarters, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic feed from the Zenith's mission. After 40 years of service, she'd seen her share of tragedy, but watching humanity extend its hand to help alien species still filled her with quiet pride. "Status update on the Zenith," she asked her adjutant. "Approaching the mining station now, Admiral. Captain Reynolds reports they're picking up approximately 3,000 life signs. Medical teams are prepping for trade operations." Santos nodded. "And the Marsans? Still keeping their distance?" "Yes, ma'am. Their patrol remains at the edge of the system. They've maintained radio silence, but haven't made any aggressive moves." The Marsans were a relatively recent addition to this sector, a militaristic species with mandibles and iridescent exoskeletons who'd expanded aggressively over the past decade. Relations were tense but stable. They respected strength and despised weakness, but they observed galactic conventions. Or so everyone thought. Good. Let's keep the diplomatic channels. The feed from the Zenith suddenly flashed crimson. The adjutant's console erupted with alerts. Multiple energy signatures. Marsan warships decloaking directly in the convoy's path. Santos leaned forward, disbelief etched across her face. What the hell are they doing? The convoy is clearly marked with medical insignia. The answer came in the form of plasma fire. Brilliant blue-white beams sliced through the darkness of space, connecting the Marsan vessels to the human rescue ships. The Zenith's shields flared briefly before collapsing. 2 escort vessels disintegrated instantly. "Get me emergency comms to the Marsan High Command." Santos barked, her calm demeanor shattered. But there was no response. No declaration, no demands. Just the methodical destruction of ships filled with doctors, nurses, and rescue specialists. Santos watched in horror as the Zenith, its hull breached in multiple sections, tried to maneuver away from the attack. The captain's voice, broken by static, came through the command center speakers. "This is Captain Reynolds of the UES Zenith. We are a medical vessel on a sanctioned rescue mission. We carry no weapons. Please cease fire. We have civilians aboard." The transmission cut off as another volley struck the ship's command section. The Zenith listed to port, atmosphere venting from multiple breaches, before secondary explosions tore it apart from within. Of the 6 ships in the rescue convoy, only one, the medical frigate Mercy, managed to jump to safety, its hull scorched and systems failing. The command center fell silent. Officers stared at screens in shock. This wasn't just an act of war. It was a violation of the most fundamental principle of interstellar relations. Admiral Santos stood rigid, her eyes fixed on the debris field that had once been humanity's premier rescue fleet. When she finally spoke, her voice was ice. "Send the message to all Earth Defense Forces. Code Black. Full mobilization." Her adjutant hesitated. "Admiral, protocol requires consultation with the Security Council before." They fired on a rescue convoy. Santos turned, her eyes burning with cold fury. "There will be no negotiations. Send the order." 3 hours later, President Eliza Chen addressed the United Earth Parliament. The chamber was packed, but eerily silent. No one spoke as footage from the Mercy's external cameras played on the main screen. Doctors in bloodied uniforms trying to save the wounded as their ship fled, the final transmissions from the other vessels, the cold precision of the Martian attack. When the footage ended, President Chen stepped to the podium. At 63, she had navigated Earth through first contact, integration into the Galactic Alliance, and numerous diplomatic crises. But nothing like this. "Representatives of Earth and her colonies," she began, her voice steady. "For 30 years, humanity has worked to earn its place among the stars. We have extended our hands in friendship, shared our knowledge, and offered our help to any who needed it. Today, the Martian hegemony has answered our goodwill with an act of barbarism that violates not just our sovereignty, but the very foundations of civilized coexistence." She paused, her gaze sweeping the chamber. "They did not attack our military. They did not strike at our infrastructure or our worlds. They targeted those who came to save lives. Doctors, medics, rescue specialists. They fired on those who carried no weapons, who posed no threat." The room remained silent, but the atmosphere had shifted from shock to something harder. "The Martian leadership has not responded to our communications. They have made no statement, offered no explanation. Their silence speaks volumes." Chen's voice dropped to a near whisper, but the audio system carried it to every corner of the chamber. "They believe we are weak because we value life. They mistake compassion for frailty. They will learn how grievously they have miscalculated." She straightened, her decision clear in every line of her body. "As of this moment, the United Earth Federation is at war with the Martian hegemony. We will not seek the Galactic Alliance's intervention. We will not issue warnings or ultimatums. The Martians have chosen their path. Now they will face the consequences." The vote was unanimous. Within hours, Earth's fleet was mobilizing. Captain Elena Chen, no relation to the president, stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, Earth's newest battlecruiser. At 39, she had already earned a reputation as one of the fleet's most brilliant tactical minds. Her crew was young but exceptionally trained, selected specifically for this ship's maiden deployment. She watched silently as the status reports filtered in from across the ship. The Defiance had been scheduled for another month of trials before entering active service, but war changed everything. Now, it would lead the first strike force into Martian territory. Captain, her XO, Commander Jackson Wei, approached with a datapad. "Final systems check complete. All weapons arrays operational, shields at full capacity. Engineering reports the quantum drive is operating within optimal parameters." Elena nodded, her expression neutral despite the gravity of the moment. "And the crew?" "Ready, sir." Angry, but focused. She studied Wei's face. They had served together on the UES Intrepid before this assignment, facing pirates and smugglers in the outer colonies. But this was different. This was war. "Good. Anger has its uses, but I need precision more than passion." She turned to face the bridge crew. "Set course for rallying point Theta. We rendezvous with the assault group in 4 hours." As the Defiance broke orbit, Elena retreated to her ready room. On her desk sat a framed photo. Elena standing beside her twin sister, Sophia, both in their academy graduation uniforms. Sophia had chosen a different path, becoming one of Earth's foremost trauma surgeons. She had been aboard the Zenith. Elena touched the frame gently. "They think they understand war," she whispered. "They're about to learn what happens when humans truly commit to battle." The Defiance accelerated toward its destination, its hull gleaming against the darkness. Behind it, 27 vessels of varying classes formed up, the first wave of Earth's response. Not a single communication was broadcast to Martian space. No declaration, no warning. They had made their choice when they fired on a rescue convoy. Now Earth would answer in kind. In her quarters aboard the Martian command vessel Dominant Will, War Leader Krastak reviewed the reports from the attack with satisfaction. The human vessels had fallen easily, as expected. Their shields were pitifully inadequate against Martian weaponry, their hulls fragile. "Excellent work, Sub-Commander," she said to her subordinate. "The humans will protest to the Alliance, of course, but by then it will be too late. Did we recover the technology?" "Yes, War Leader. The medical databases were extracted before final termination of the target vessels. Our scientists are analyzing the data now." Krastak's mandibles clicked in pleasure. The humans' advanced medical knowledge, particularly their breakthroughs in cross-species neural regeneration, would give the hegemony a crucial advantage in the coming conflicts. The Alliance rules prohibited forcible technology transfer, but what the humans wouldn't share willingly, the Martians would take. And the humans' response? Nothing yet. War Leader. Their diplomatic channels remain silent. We expect formal protests within the next cycle. Krastak's compound eyes glittered. They are as weak as our intelligence suggested. Prepare the next phase of the operation. We move on their research outpost in the Ta City system within. An alarm shrieked through the command chamber. The tactical officer's carapace paled to a sickly yellow. War Leader. Multiple quantum signatures detected at the edge of the Ventari system. Configuration matches human warships. At least 20 vessels. Krastak rose from her command throne. Impossible. Their nearest battle group is stationed 3 sectors away. The tactical display updated, showing a formation of Earth vessels moving at combat speed toward the Martian outpost on Ventari II. They weren't broadcasting any communications. They weren't following standard approach protocols. They were coming in hot, weapons charged. Krastak felt the first stirrings of unease as she studied the data. These weren't the lighter patrol vessels their intelligence had reported. These were capital ships, heavy cruisers, destroyers, and what appeared to be an entirely new class of battlecruiser leading the formation. How did they mobilize so quickly? She hissed. The answer hit her with sudden clarity. The humans hadn't waited for diplomatic channels. They hadn't filed protests or sought alliance mediation. They had simply gone to war. As the Defiance led Earth's first strike force toward the Martian outpost, Captain Chen reviewed the final attack plan. The element of surprise would be their greatest advantage. That, and the fact that the Martians clearly underestimated humanity's resolve. "Execute jump on my mark," she ordered, her voice calm but commanding. "Weapons free the moment we exit quantum space. Primary targets are their defense platforms and command centers. No communication until objectives are secured." She paused, making eye contact with each officer on the bridge. "Remember what we're fighting for. Remember the zenith, but execute with precision, not passion." The strike force accelerated to quantum speed, disappearing in flashes of blue-white energy. The war had begun, and Earth would make sure the Martians understood exactly what they had provoked. Calculated fury. The Martian outpost on Ventari II never had a chance. Earth's strike force emerged from quantum space with perfect synchronization, weapons already tracking pre-designated targets. The Defiance led the assault, its advanced targeting systems identifying and neutralizing the outpost's defensive grid before the Martians could even sound a general alarm. Captain Elena Chen watched the tactical display with clinical detachment as Earth's vessels executed a textbook encirclement. The new Artemis-class rail guns mounted on the Defiance's forward section reduced Martian defense platforms to twisted metal with surgical precision. "Defense grid neutralized," her tactical officer reported. "Ground installations are returning fire, but their tracking systems can't compensate for our ECM suite." Elena nodded. Comments Phase 2. Target their command center and communications array. The strike force responded with coordinated precision. Particle beams and kinetic projectiles rained down on the primary Marsan facilities, guided by targeting data shared across the fleet network. Within 20 minutes, the outpost's ability to coordinate a defense had been shattered. The Admiral had anticipated the possibility of a trap and positioned a secondary force within the nebula itself, ready to respond if needed. Now they emerged, catching the Marsan fleet in a pincer movement. Signal from the Admiral. The communications officer reported. Message reads, "Thought you might appreciate some company, Captain Chen." The arrival of Earth reinforcements shifted the balance decisively. The Marsan vessels, caught between two coordinated attack forces, began to take heavy damage. War Leader Krastok is hailing again, the communications officer reported. Elena nodded. Put her through. The Marsan commander appeared again, her command center now bathed in the red glow of emergency lighting. Damage control teams scurried behind her. Human commander, she began, her earlier confidence gone. This conflict benefits neither of our species. The attack on your medical vessels was an error. We are prepared to offer reparations, and the time for negotiations was before you fired on defenseless medical ships. Elena interrupted. Now you'll deal with the consequences. Krastok's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. You would risk full-scale war, the destruction of millions on both sides, over a single incident. Elena leaned forward, her voice cutting like steel. That single incident cost the lives of Earth's finest medical personnel, people who had dedicated their lives to healing, to helping others regardless of species, people who posed no threat to you. She paused, letting her words register. But unlike you, we don't target civilians or non-combatants. Your military installations, your weapons platforms, your warships, those are legitimate targets, and we will continue to eliminate them until your leadership understands that actions have consequences. Krastok's compound eyes shifted, a Marsan expression that human intelligence had identified as indicating deep concern. What are your terms? Unconditional withdrawal from all territories bordering Earth space, return of all data stolen from our medical vessels, and the commanders responsible for ordering the attack on our convoy will stand trial before a Galactic Alliance tribunal. Impossible. The Council would never. Then this is just the beginning, Elena said simply. Admiral Santos will transmit formal terms. You have 12 hours to commence compliance. She signaled her communications officer to end the transmission. Orders, Captain. Commander Wei asked. Elena studied the tactical display. The Marsan fleet was already beginning to withdraw, their formation breaking down as individual commanders made their own decisions about whether to continue the fight. Maintain combat posture. Coordinate with the Admiral's forces to secure our exit vector. She paused. And prepare a comprehensive analysis of Marsan tactical responses during this engagement. I want to understand exactly how they think and fight. As the Earth vessels regrouped, Elena found herself reflecting on the wider implications of the conflict. The Marsans had misjudged humanity fundamentally. They had mistaken compassion for weakness, restraint for inability. They had assumed that a species that valued peace would be unwilling or unable to wage effective war. It was a mistake many had made before when dealing with humans, a mistake that rarely ended well for those who made it. 3 days later, Elena stood in the Defiance's observation lounge, watching as shuttles ferried Marsan representatives to the neutral station where peace negotiations would begin. The hegemony had accepted Earth's terms, not out of moral recognition, but pragmatic necessity. 3 devastating strikes had demonstrated humanity's reach and resolve. Do you think it will last? Commander Wei asked, joining her at the viewport. Elena considered the question carefully. The peace? For now. They've learned we're not to be trifled with. Whether that lesson sticks depends on their culture's capacity for adaptation. And if it doesn't, then we'll be ready. She turned away from the viewport. But I hope it does. War should always be the last resort. even when it's necessary. As she walked back toward the bridge, Alina thought about her sister and the other medical personnel who had died aboard the Zenith. They had represented the best of humanity, its compassion, its ingenuity, its desire to heal and help. But the Marsans now understood that humanity's capacity for calculated fury was equally impressive, that when pushed too far, the same species that extended its hand in friendship could strike with devastating precision. It was a balance that humans had always understood about themselves, both the healers and the warriors, the builders and the destroyers. Perhaps now, the rest of the galaxy was beginning to understand it too. Or launching fighters, Commander Wei reported. Approximately 40 craft, ascending from the secondary hangars. The gambit paid off. 31 hours later, the Defiance led its task force through the swirling gases and energy discharges of the Cygnus Void, navigating a treacherous path that Marsan strategists had deemed unsuitable for military operations. When they emerged, the massive shipyards of Carinae Prime lay before them, their defenses oriented toward the expected attack corridors. The Marsan commanders had barely enough time to register the human vessel's presence before the first volley of missiles streaked toward their unprepared installations. The assault was swift and devastating. Earth ships targeted critical infrastructure, construction platforms, power generation facilities, command and control nodes. Within 40 minutes, the pride of Marsan shipbuilding capability had been reduced to drifting debris and crippled structures. As they executed their carefully planned withdrawal, reports filtered in from the other task forces. Similar success at the weapons facility. The fleet anchorage assault had met heavier resistance, but had still achieved its primary objectives. Earth's message was clear. No target was beyond reach. No defense was impenetrable. But as the Defiance prepared to jump to its extraction coordinates, the tactical situation changed dramatically. Multiple quantum signatures detected. The sensor officer called out. Marsan vessels, at least 30 heavy combatants emerging from hyperspace. Alina studied the tactical display, her mind racing. Configuration. Dreadnought-class vessels in the center, escorted by cruisers and destroyers. They've positioned themselves to block our withdrawal route. It was a trap, or at least a contingency the Marsans had prepared. They might not have anticipated the exact attack vector, but they had been ready to commit massive forces once the human strike was detected. Full power to forward shields, Alina ordered. Bring us about to heading 227 Mark 15. All vessels to combat formation Delta. Her bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, the Defiance turning to face the emerging threat. The rest of the task force fell into position around their flagship, forming a defensive envelope. They're hailing us, the communications officer reported with surprise. Alina raised an eyebrow. On screen, the image of war leader Krastok appeared on the main display, her iridescent carapace gleaming under the lights of her command center. Human commander, she began, mandibles clicking between words. You have demonstrated your point. Your attack on our medical convoy was inexcusable, but further escalation serves neither of our species. Alina's expression remained neutral, but inwardly she was stunned by the Marsans' audacity. Our attack, she repeated coldly. Your forces fired on clearly marked Earth medical ships engaged in a rescue operation. Ships carrying doctors and relief supplies, not weapons. Krastok's compound eyes shifted in what might have been confusion. The ships were targeted because they violated our sovereign space and ignored warnings to withdraw. They approached a sensitive military installation. They were responding to a distress call from a civilian mining operation. Alina cut her off. In neutral space, with full Alliance sanction. A brief silence followed as Krastok conferred with someone off-screen. When she returned her attention to the transmission, her demeanor had subtly changed. It appears there may have been a misunderstanding, she said carefully. Perhaps it would be beneficial to both our species if we were to. Launch detected. The tactical officer interrupted. Multiple missiles from the Marsan support vessels. Alina's jaw tightened. Cut transmission. Evasive maneuvers, pattern Echo 7. Return fire, all batteries. The space between the opposing forces erupted in weapons fire. The Defiance shuddered as its shields absorbed the first impacts. They were stalling, Commander Wei said grimly, trying to keep us in position while they maneuvered their forces. Yes, Elena agreed, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. And now we know something else too. What's that, Captain? They're afraid. She studied the attack pattern on her tactical display. They committed a massive force to intercept us, far more than would be tactically necessary. They're escalating because they're desperate. The battle intensified, Earth ships weaving through the barrage of Martian fire while returning precision strikes against key targets. Despite being outnumbered, the human vessels displayed superior maneuverability and coordination. New contacts, the sensor officer called out, emerging from the nebula field. For a moment, Elena feared the worst, that the Martians had anticipated her strategy more thoroughly than she'd realized. But as the signatures clarified on her display, a grim smile crossed her face. Earth vessels, the officer confirmed. Admiral Santos leading a relief force. They weren't behaving like the emotional, unpredictable species Martian intelligence had described. They were fighting with cold, calculated fury. And that was far more dangerous. Back aboard the Defiance, Captain Chen reviewed the after-action reports as her ship maintained position above the neutralized Martian outpost. The operation had been a success by every metric: minimal Earth casualties, complete achievement of objectives, and a clear demonstration of force. Incoming transmission from Fleet Command, her communications officer announced. Admiral Santos requests your presence for a strategic briefing. Elena nodded. Pipe it through to my ready room. The holographic figure of Admiral Santos materialized above Elena's desk. Despite the perfect rendering, Elena could see the exhaustion in the older woman's eyes. Captain Chen, excellent work at Ventari. Your after-action report has already been processed. Thank you, Admiral. The Defiance performed beyond expectations. My crew executed their duties admirably. Santos nodded. I'm promoting you to Task Force Commander, effective immediately. The Defiance will lead our next operation. A coordinated strike against 3 Martian installations along the Carinae front. Elena studied the tactical data that appeared alongside Santos's image. The targets were military in nature: a shipyard, a weapons development facility, and a major fleet anchorage. These are deep in Martian territory, Elena observed, well beyond the range of easy reinforcement. Yes, this isn't about holding ground. It's about demonstrating that nowhere in Martian space is beyond our reach. Santos' expression hardened. Intelligence indicates the attack on our medical convoy wasn't a rogue action or a misidentification. It was sanctioned at the highest levels, part of an operation to capture our neural regeneration technology. Elena felt a cold fury build behind her professional demeanor. Sophia had been working on that technology, developing methods to repair neural damage across species lines. It had been her life's work. When do we deploy? She asked simply. 12 hours. Your support vessels are already en route to the rendezvous point. Santos paused. This won't be like Ventari, Elena. They'll be expecting us now. Prepared. So will we. After the Admiral's image faded, Elena remained at her desk, studying the mission parameters. 3 targets, hit simultaneously by separate task forces, with the Defiance leading the assault on the primary objective, the shipyard at Carinae Prime. The plan was sound, the objectives clear. But something nagged at her tactical instincts. The Martians had miscalculated badly with their attack on the Zenith, but they weren't fools. They would adapt, learn from their defeat at Ventari. XO, assemble the senior staff in the Strategic Operations Center, she ordered over the intercom. I want every aspect of this operation scrutinized before we commit. 4 hours later, Elena's concerns had solidified into certainty. She stood before the holographic display in the ship's command center. Her senior officers gathered around her. The Marsans will be expecting conventional assault vectors, she explained, highlighting approach corridors in the tactical simulation. They'll have reinforced their defensive perimeters and likely positioned their main battle groups to intercept forces approaching from Earth-controlled space. Commander Wei frowned at the display. So we abandoned the operation. No, we changed the approach. Elena manipulated the holographic controls, shifting the planned attack vectors dramatically. Instead of approaching from Earth space, we'll route through the Cygnus Void. Several officers exchanged concerned glances. The Cygnus Void was a treacherous region of space, a dense nebula field riddled with gravitational anomalies and radiation hazards. Ships typically gave it a wide berth. That would add 17 hours to our approach, her navigator noted, and reduce our chances of early detection to near zero, Elena countered. More importantly, it positions us to approach from a vector the Marsans will consider strategically implausible. She expanded the simulation, showing the complex route she proposed. We'll need to recalibrate our sensors to compensate for the nebula effects, and navigation will be challenging. But if we execute correctly, we'll emerge less than 30,000 kilometers from the Carinae shipyards, well inside their outer defensive perimeter. Her officers studied the plan, expressions shifting from skepticism to cautious approval as they processed the tactical advantages. It was risky, unconventional, but potentially brilliant. Make the necessary preparations, Elena ordered, and transmit the revised approach to Admiral Santos for approval. I want us ready to execute the moment we receive confirmation. Let the Harriers handle them, Elena ordered. The 4 destroyer escorts broke formation, deploying their own fighter squadrons. The space above Venturi II erupted with the flashes of dogfights. Brief, brutal exchanges that overwhelmingly favored the prepared human forces. Elena turned to her communications officer. Any transmissions from their command? None directed to us, Captain. We've intercepted several distress calls to their nearest battle group, but our jammers are limiting their effective range. Good. Maintain electronic warfare protocols. She turned back to the main display. Status of primary objectives. Command center neutralized. Communications hub offline. Their orbital platforms are disabled. Ground resistance continues, but it's disorganized and ineffective. Elena checked the mission clock. 27 minutes since they'd emerged from quantum space. The operation was running 3 minutes ahead of schedule. All vessels, execute containment protocol, she ordered. I want this system locked down. Nothing gets in or out without our knowledge. As her crew carried out their orders, Elena permitted herself a moment of satisfaction. The first strike had been flawlessly executed. Earth had demonstrated that it could and would respond with overwhelming force when provoked. But she knew this was just the beginning. Captain, Wei approached, lowering his voice. Some of the crew are asking, what's next? Do we occupy the outpost? Extract surrenders. Elena met his gaze steadily. Our orders are clear, Commander. This isn't about conquest or territory. This outpost served as a forward operating base for the attack on our medical convoy. We're here to ensure it can never serve that function again. We nodded, understanding. And the personnel. Any who surrender will be detained and transferred to Alliance custody once the operation concludes. We're not here for vengeance, Commander. We're here to deliver a message. The message was received. Within hours, news of the swift and devastating human attack had spread across Mars and space. War leader Krastok, recalled to the hegemony capital, faced the Council of Dominance with the first failure of her career. How is this possible? High Commander Vexmar demanded, his massive form looming over the war table. You assured us the humans would respond through diplomatic channels. You claimed their military was positioned defensively, incapable of rapid offensive action. Krastok struggled to maintain her composure. Our intelligence was incomplete, High Commander. The humans deployed vessels we had no record of. Their tactics showed none of the hesitation or restraint they've demonstrated in previous engagements. Because you attacked their healers, Another counselor hissed, "Even the Shorty respect medical vessels, and they eat their own wounded." The operation was sanctioned by this very council, Krastok reminded them, her mandibles clicking in agitation. The human neural regeneration technology was deemed essential to our long-term military strategy. High Commander Vex Moore silenced the debate with a thunderous slam of his armored gauntlet. What's done is done. The question now is how we respond. The humans have struck one outpost, significant but hardly crippling to our operations. They've made their statement. They haven't made any statement, Krastok corrected. That's what disturbs me. No demands, no communications at all, just precise, coordinated destruction. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans weren't seeking concessions or territorial gains. This wasn't a negotiating tactic. Mobilize the 3rd and 5th battle groups, Vex Mare finally ordered. Position them to intercept any further human incursions and activate the Nexus Protocol. Several counselors chittered in alarm. The Nexus Protocol is an extreme measure, one objected. It would commit significant resources and the humans have shown us a new face. Vex Mare cut in. We must be prepared if they continue this aggression. Krastok, you will coordinate the defense of our core systems while we implement these measures. As the council dispersed, Krastok lingered, reviewing the tactical data from Ventari I once more. Something about the human attack pattern nagged at her military instincts. It had been too clean, too measured. The humans had destroyed exactly what they aimed to destroy, nothing more.